Thanks, Tim. There's a leadership development consultant, leading thinker in leadership around about now called Simon Sinek. I'm sure many people have heard of him. And he's got, one of these websites where you can click on a link and subscribe to a daily input of some kind, and you get a thing that pops up on your email every morning. And, I get a lot of emails, unlike everybody else here, so I don't get through all of them. And today I just happened to notice the Simon Sinek email. And I thought, well, boy, did he get his timing right today. His email said, "It's okay if others take our ideas as long as we build on them. As long as they build on them. It's called progress." So I think it's a great environment for us to think about that, to have, okay, what are the ideas that I can pick up? It's great to attend, it's great to do the networking. What are the ideas that I can pick up that I can take away and build on, because it's called progress. So, I'm going to start with a couple of questions, and this is, I just want you to have a look at the questions and think about it for yourself, not answer them or put your hand up, nothing like that. What do you most want to get from today's conference? What do you, the thing, if you look closely at your chair, there's a thing sitting in it. So the thing sitting in your seat, what do you want to get, most want to get out of today's conference, and what are you going to do to make sure you get it? And I'm asking that question coming from a particular place. Finn said in his opening this morning, he made reference to Mark Gallagher and his inspirational talk at the start of last year's conference. I was intrigued at the detail and the journey and all of that Mark shared. For those of you who were here, you may remember the way he closed it. He stood about center stage and he said, "It's been 20 years and it was a journey worth taking. Thank you for listening." And he walked that way and walked down off the stage. And that was the thing that really stuck with me. It's been 20 years and it was a journey worth taking. So what if a journey worth taking started today? What if 20 years from now, somebody in this audience was standing up here saying, it was a journey worth taking? What if that video we watched at the start became reality? Like, no kidding, what if that was the case? And if there's something on your mind that you really want to get out of today, what are you going to do to get it and get it started? So, that's the first thing. Second thing is this. If we're working together, there are different ways that we can work together, and we use this slide quite a bit with clients. Some of it is entertaining, and then some of it is thought-provoking. If anybody's familiar with this, you've probably worked somewhere. Right? All you have to do is work somewhere and you'll see this, right? Anybody knows what this looks like. So gossip, turf protection, covering your tracks, although it says CYA in brackets for some reason, and then lack of communication, right? Occasionally there's communication. Somebody lobs a concrete block over the fence and it lands on someone over there. You got your communication, right? Great. So everybody recognizes that one. And then there's peaceful coexistence. Everything looks quite nice around here. We all seem to get on very well. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. But what happens is there's a pleasant or polite attitude. Help is given when it's requested. Complacency and no real enthusiasm. People don't call each other on their commitments. People don't say, you said you would and you haven't. What's going on? That's in peaceful coexistence. We don't do that. And things look pretty good on the surface. If we're going to work together, what about if it was active mutual support, because that's something worth committing myself to? Not you do your 50% and I'll do my 50%. No, I'm committed to active mutual support, and that's the game I play because it's a game worth playing for me. What if that was the way it went? Where there was high energy and vitality for what we're committed to, and we're clear about what we're committed to and we keep at it. Cooperation, help offered before it's requested, trust and openness, and coaching, not criticism. Later on today, the second session that I'll do today is from, I think, 3:15 to 4:15. It'll be a tiny bit of input into the room around coaching, and then an opportunity to spend most of that hour actually in coaching conversations in pairs in the room, working your challenges. Real challenges, real coaching conversations, looking for what breakthrough ideas might come from that. So 340 people doing that together. Not bad. So, active mutual support, one of the things we're aiming for. This model, active mutual support takes people, so this model is about people. And some people in the room are familiar with this model, some people in the room are quite familiar with this model. We call it an integral approach to safety, and it looks at both the individual and the group, and the inside and the outside of people. So if you want to know what I'm doing, what my behavior is, watch. It's walking across a stage, it's talking out loud, it has its finger in the air, and there's a pointer in its hand. You want to know what I'm doing? Just watch. All you got to do is observe, and that's the access to that right-hand side. The access to the right-hand side is observation. What's the access to the left-hand side? If you want to know who I am, if you want to know what's personal to me, what I'm committed to, what my attitudes are, we got to be in a conversation. So observation on the right-hand side, conversation on the left-hand side. And how we're going to work together and the way that we set things up and what we're committed to all gets articulated in language. It doesn't get, physically put in place. It gets created in language, and then things happen because of what we said we were committed to. Right? And all of that, the access to all of that is in this left-hand side. It shows up on the right-hand side because that's the real measurable world. There's a physical stage, there's a box in front of me, there are tables and real people, and I can observe their behavior. The systems that we put in place, white lines on the road, traffic lights, speed limit signs, those systems are designed to get us to behave in line with an intention. But that intention gets created in language on that left-hand side. And unfortunately, we forget a lot that we have access to that. We forget that it's available. And we call this integral because it's always happening all at the same time. It's always happening together. There's no, I'll work on systems and not on the other three. The other three are happening while you're working on the systems. Right? There's always a culture. Sometimes you hear people say, oh yeah, we don't have a safety culture here. It's like, yes you do, you just don't have the one you want. But there's always a culture. Right? There's always a culture. And the culture is the thing that says what's okay around here and what's not okay around here. Right? It's not written down what's okay and what's not okay. It's not written down what makes you a hero and what makes you an idiot. But everybody knows it because it's alive in the culture. Making sense? I got 3 nods. Making sense? Yes. Okay, cool. They're alive, Tim. They're alive. All right. So, an example, I offer this model for looking at your challenges a little bit later in this hour, and then as the day goes on, and later on when we're in these coaching conversations, it's like, where's there work for you to go do? Where is there something to put your attention on? What is it that you're challenged with, and what access do you want to it? A couple of examples of how this all works together. My personal intention really gives me what my behavior is, and my behavior is what you can observe. In the culture, I remember when I was about 11 or 12 years old, just a few years ago, and what was that laughter? Yeah, Tim does the jokes. That wasn't a joke. It really was only a few years ago. They brought seatbelts in as law in Ireland. If you hadn't already spotted it, I grew up in Ireland. They brought seatbelts in as law when I was about 11 or 12, and it took 30 years to catch on. 30 years it took to catch on. It became law overnight, and then it took forever to catch on. It took an entire generation or a bit more. Because people had this great story in the culture. People had this great story about, well, it crumples my clothes and I don't need to wear that because I'm a safe driver. And I heard a story where Alice's nephew's cousin's next door neighbor's son was trapped in a car because he was wearing one of those seat belts and he couldn't get out of it. No, it took 30 years to catch on. Now fast forward to a lot more recently, and they brought the smoking ban in. Made it law overnight. And it caught on overnight. And the difference this time round was the culture had already made up its mind. Smoking in public and smoking in the workplace and smoking around others who don't want it is socially unacceptable. Culture was already ready. So what is there out there that the culture is ready for that we haven't put in place yet? What is it the culture is pulling for that we haven't put in place yet in our industry? And what's in place that's not quite a match with the culture, that's taking a lot longer than we deserve, given all the effort that's going into putting systems in place and trying to control risks in the way that we do? What have we got in place that the culture hasn't embraced, and why is that? Questions worth asking. So in a tough environment like the one we're experiencing now in the industry, this quote from a book called Good to Great by Jim Collins. A quick show of hands, who's read this book? Yeah, so anyone who saw a hand, talk to that person and they'll recommend the book. It's worth reading. He says, retain faith that you will prevail in the end regardless of the difficulties. Regardless of the difficulties. Be true to what you're committed to. Be true to your vision. Retain faith that you will get there in the end. There was a big guy with a beard up here a short while ago. Do you remember him? Yeah, he's hard to forget. Retain faith that you will prevail in the end, regardless of the difficulties. And at the same time, confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they might be. Now, this quote came from a story where a prisoner of war who was in a Japanese prisoner of war camp in World War II told this guy, Jim Collins, the story of how the realists were the ones who got out alive and got home to their families when the war was over. The pessimist died and the optimist died in the prisoner of war camp. They didn't make it. Everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. They didn't make it. They cracked. The pessimists, they died first. They just gave up. It's like, we're never getting out of here, we're not getting home, life is over, and they died. The people who said, this is crap, and we're going home. This is crap, and we're going home. He said they were the guys who got home. So, retain faith that you will prevail in the end, regardless of the difficulties, and at the same time, confront the brutal facts of your current reality. There are some brutal facts in the current reality. It's tough going. And there's something you're committed to remain true to, that will work out in the end. Fair enough? Fair enough. I see nods. I want to go back just for a second, if you'll allow me, to this. There are a couple of things I just want to distinguish. I said the left-hand side was the inside of people, and the right-hand side is the outside observable behavioral systems at the group level part of people. You could say that on this left-hand side is where leadership resides. On the right-hand side is where management resides. We manage over here, we lead from here. This is who I'm being. This is what I'm doing. Right? If you think about an incident that happened, this is what happened, and this is why it happened. So it gives you a useful distinction in terms of seeing from there. This retain faith that you will prevail in the end, that's not a list of things to do, that's a who to be. That's a being about your circumstances. So the power of perception. The power of perception. Safety performance is a function of one's perception of the circumstances, not the circumstances themselves. That's an assertion that we make. So if you ask most normal human beings, why did you do that thing? They will say, well, because that happened. Right? So we very often talk about our behavior, the action we take is because of the circumstances we find ourselves in, which makes us sound highly reactive all the time. And actually, we are highly reactive a lot of the time. And a good candidate for exploring what's really going on for me and what's going on for the guy at the top of the ladder and what's going on for someone who's doing something at risk that I can see is dangerous, but they seem to be whistling at work. They don't seem to feel like they're in danger. A good candidate in our book is this word perception, this whole notion of perception. That what you get is the way I see things around me makes me do the things I do and the way I do them, and then I get the results I get. But we behave like we do stuff to get results, and we do stuff to get results, and we don't consider enough. What's the way that I see this that has me act the way I act? What has me see this such that I make the decisions I make and the moves that I make? An interesting one for us to grapple with, actually, around perception is in the pre-conference survey, about 30% of the people here responded to the pre-conference survey. And just one example out of that, in OGP statistics, Denmark shows as being in the bottom quartile, at the top of it, but in the bottom quartile around safety performance. About a third of the respondents to the survey put Denmark in the top quartile. Two different perceptions. One based on fact, one based on how I feel about it when I'm filling out the survey. Two different perceptions and a gap to address, a gap to be curious about, a gap to get on top of. Right? It's an example of how we can challenge the perceptions out there. And when Ewan comes on, I think you'll hear him talk about, pretty sure you'll hear him talk about perceptions and challenging them. Okay, so you remember that video this morning? This builds on perception. I'll say how it does in a moment. Remember that video we saw this morning that's set in 2028, and then we wound the clock back to today, and here we are having these conversations. What's going to happen between now and 2028? In the video, the future was declared. The future was described in a particular way for us. Like it unfolded because of commitments we made and actions we took. And the industry is in a particular state, and we focused in the video on the Danish part of the North Sea, and advancements and improvements and successes. So this is a way to look at that. It's a way to represent what that video was saying. The video is a brilliant way of getting us to imagine out into the future, and this here is intended to give us an access to that kind of thinking. So the future unfolds like everything after now is the future. Right? We think about the future like, oh, 2028, but actually everything after right now is the future. And just as a reminder, everything after right now is the future, and everything after right now, that's the future. It's going past us like this. And we only ever have now. You only ever have now to think or act. And you have a future to think about, imagine, and hope for, and plan for, and determine how it's going to go. But it's a concept in your head. The only place you ever are is right now. Right now, and right now. So if you keep that, I know you know this. This is not like teaching. This is reminding. I'm very well aware that you know you can only be here now. So the way we operate typically, or this is a way to represent the way we operate typically in this three-circle model, is we have, I know what I know, I do what I do, and I get what I get as an output. I know what I know, I do what I do, and I get what I get as an output. The future is an output from everything I already know, what I do right now in the present, boom. Future is an output. And what happens, I'm just going to populate this a bit. Okay. And what happens is we do more, better, and different versions of the past by repeating the cycle, right? So the future, as a probable future, the future is largely based on the past, right? When somebody says it's lunchtime, what are you going to do? Sit here wondering where to go? You're going to head straight up the stairs where you know the food will be, because that's where it was last year. Right? And not only that, but the first brave person out that door is going to shove the door open and walk straight out as if there's a floor there, and not stop to check that there's one there. Because there was one there when you came in. It's highly likely that there'll be one there when you go out. So there's nothing wrong with this model. In fact, this is the model for incremental improvement. Right? This got us from the Model T Ford to the best car you can buy today, whatever you might argue that is. But it's the same thing. It's a box on 4 wheels with some seats inside it. But look at the advancement. It's getting better and better and better over time. Now, so that's one way to look at the future. Another way to look at the future, and this isn't a different future. Remember, there's one future, it's everything after now. This is a different way to look at the future or to relate to the future. And it's to declare the future, and to declare the future standing in vision, commitment, declaration, and responsibility, my own personal responsibility in the matter. I say the future is going to go a certain way because I get to say so. The hole in the front of my mouth is what I can use to say the future's going to be this way because I'm committed to it and I get to say so. You may remember there was a big guy with a beard up here not so long ago. Yeah? Yeah, okay. Declared future. So, the difference between the future as an output or future as a probability is the declared future is grounded in possibility, and it is an input into today, not an output from today. It tells you now. It gives you new eyes on today, right now, by saying, it's going to be this way, I'm committed to it, what do I have to do to get it worked out? It's a particularly powerful access to that future. And it informs today in a particular way. It tells you what to get to work on. And here's the link back to that perception thing. It allows for new actions that bring, I beg your pardon, it allows for new perceptions that bring breakthrough actions in the present. Because the only time you can ever have a breakthrough action is right now. And right now, and right now. So, you get the idea of the declared future? Right. You did warn me, Tim. You did, I have to say, you were very fair to me, Tim. You did warn me. They don't say much. Okay. Now, anybody ever been to one of these places? Hands up. Yeah, okay. It's about half the room, at least half the room. After you got through the gate and got over the shock of the entrance fee, after that bit, what was the very first thing you noticed about inside that gate? I'm sorry. Awful music. Awful music. Okay, that wasn't the answer I was looking for. Someone help me here, quickly. This is going south. It's super clean, isn't it? I heard a couple of people say it's clean. Tidy. It is clean like you can't get clean. You can't do the kind of clean they have inside that gate, but it's there. How do you get that clean? Right? Like you can't have tens of thousands of people move through en masse any place and not have litter. You can't, and yet they pull it off. Now, how do they do it? Well, one is, when you go through the gate, they immediately move you to the left, and they put you in a porta cabin, and you get the littering orientation. And when you've... No, actually, sorry, no, they don't do that there. What they do is they give you a hard hat, and they stick a sticker on your helmet to say, "I don't litter." And then a few meters later, there's this big wall of people that you have to walk through, and they give you a high-vis jacket, and it says on the back, "Talk to me about litter." No, they don't do any of that stuff. But people walk in there and they go, "Oh, you don't drop your stuff on the floor here." Very clear. This is a place you don't drop. And you see people going, kids, don't put that on the ground. Put that over here. Right? People behave differently in that kind of environment. Now, find the do not litter signs here. There aren't any. Walt Disney said, "Fairy tale lands aren't dirty." So our place can't have a speck of dirt in it. Fairy tale lands aren't dirty. So one of the things that I often ask clients to think about is, what if you got to the point where you had something not like that, but something of that standard, such that you could take down all of your signs, all your company logos, all the references to your company or your brand, and have people march in and go, "Oh, I'm clearly in a Maersk oil operation. Oh, I clearly just walked into a Shell office," or whatever, wherever, right? Or what if a day came when, this is the bit where I get emotional, what if a day came where you were in a shopping mall in Copenhagen and somebody fell over, or you noticed they were at risk and you stepped and said, "Oh, take care of yourself," and they turned around and went, "Oh, you must work for Hess. You must work for Hess. They're the only people who interact with strangers this way." What if it was like that? What if it was like that? And what if we could say, "You know what? We're clear about the way we're going to create this, and you better be counting on the 340 people in this room." I don't think most people here came for entertainment. I think you came here because there's a future for you. So let's be thinking about the future. So that's me for the moment. I'm going to ask Ewan to join me. Thanks for coming, Ewan. Ewan is the country manager for Chevron, for those who don't know him. And Ewan has got, I'll give you that. Ewan has got a personal story, personal journey, success story to share. And you'll hear some things that come out in reference to, or that refer back to, some of the things that I've shared. These are bits and pieces of our incident and injury-free approach, our incident and injury-free program at J&J. And Ewan has worked with us on an incident and injury-free program, so he'll make reference to IIF and perception and stuff like that. So you'll hear a bit of repeat. Over to Ewan.
Thanks. Alan. I'm alive. Okay, thank you, Alan. So, as I got introduced, I'm Chevron's country manager. I've been in Denmark since the beginning of the year. I've worked here previously. But I'm going to talk about my last job, which was in the Netherlands. I was the operations manager for Chevron. We had a variety of platforms. I've got one of them up on the board behind me. This is one of our oil assets. These were 20 to 30-year-old assets. We called them late life, but to be honest, they were very late life assets. They were just waiting to decommission. How do you keep them going at that stage? We also had some gas assets, actually very close to Danish waters. I think our nearest platform was maybe 50 kilometers away from the Gorm assets. So nearly the same environment we're working in, just over the border. So when I came as the operations manager previous to me, there'd been a few real near misses. We nearly killed a couple of people in our operations. Someone fell through some well-bay hatches and dropped 8 meters. Really lucky to live. Some instrument tubing probably saved their life. So they'd started a program. How do we make this place safer? How do we change the culture of the people here? A number of things we're doing. One of them was engaging JMJ to try and help us think about how do we change people's mindsets? How do we change the perception of what's safe and what's acceptable within this industry? So no sooner was I in the job, maybe 6 months down the line, we'd had 3 recordable incidents. I hardly got my feet under the table. I've been to maybe half my platforms, and I've already got a lot of incidents. Doesn't feel like the place I want to work. I didn't want to be the person who rocked up at someone's door and said, sorry, your partner's not coming home today. He died on one of my platforms. Wasn't the type of operation I wanted to run. I wanted to have a safe operation. I wanted all my team to go home safely at the end of the day. Something that was very passionate. But when I spoke to my team, what was their perception? And this is a link to the model we've talked about. Their perception, well, accidents happen, Ewan. It's the offshore industry. They were just minor incidents, Ewan. Don't worry about it. We're here to make barrels, Ewan. That's what the oil industry is about. I mean, some of this was driven because we were a very late life asset. We needed to make barrels to keep profitable. And people had got this into mind that, well, incidents can happen. People can trip down the stairs and damage their wrists. They can have things dropping on them. That's okay. But that wasn't okay to me. I didn't like that feeling. So probably for the first year there, I spent 80% of my time on safety, trying to change people, trying to make this a safer place to live, work. I'm not going to go through everything we did in that year. I'm going to talk about perception. Magic. So we saw a quote earlier on from Jim Collins about the brutal reality. This was our brutal reality. Here's my assets. This is looking at all the operations within Chevron across the world. Chevron's a big company. We've maybe got 65,000 people around the world, work in lots of different countries, lots of complex processes. And the operation I was running was 8th worst in the world. Now, it's not a nice place to be. All these other people can do better than my team could. So what did I hear from my team when I saw this? I think the first one was denial. That can't be true. You're cheating the figures. And then it was, we're not that bad. Other people are lying. Other people just aren't recording their incidents. It can't be true. All these people are better than us. Then the next one was, well, not that big an organization. We don't work that many hours. This incident rate doesn't do us any favors. Forgetting that, not working many hours means you're exposed to less risk. Hadn't quite got that in their minds properly. Then it was, our incidents were quite small. Other people have killed people. How can we be 8th worst in Chevron? So this whole denial process going on in their minds that we can't be that bad. And eventually they said, okay, how do this 65 people, 65 units, be incident injury free? Not all of them can be lying. Not all of them can have small operations like we have. Other people can manage to do this. Why can't we? I think that was part of our breakthrough with the team. This realization that we're 8th worst in the whole of Chevron. I think it hit their pride as well. Here's all these roughy-tufty Netherlands offshore workers, and they're 8th worst in the world. They look around the world, all the places Chevron run. So we know how to run these assets. We've been running them for 20 or 30 years. And other people all around the world can do it safer than we can. Didn't feel good to them. They wanted to be better. They thought they were better than that. With the same perception with safety versus production, something probably most of us struggle with or talk about all the day. There was a perception in the team that Ewan talked about safety because he had to. Chevron says safety is the most important thing. So Ewan has to talk about safety and tell us it's most important. But he's the operations manager. He actually wants barrels. That's really what he wants. He doesn't want safety. So somewhere between Ewan saying safety is most important down to the workforce, there was this change in perception about what was the most important. So we had to try and change that. And some of the things we did, we had an incident and a shutdown. We flew out to the platform. We stopped the shutdown for a day, and we talked to them. Nothing happened. Tools down for the whole day. We actually extended the shutdown by a week. to make sure we could finish that shutdown incident injury free. Another incident wasn't acceptable. We had another shutdown on our largest platform, the one that probably made 80% of our money. We found we had the long lifting gear to do a compressor change out. The platform were going to modify it offshore. They were going to cut off a lifting lug, weld on a new one. Said, it'll be okay. Said, well, it wasn't okay to me. So we flew out a helicopter, we got the lifting gear, flown back to shore, everything done properly and certified, back offshore before we did the next job. It probably cost us $6 million, that decision. People began to realize safety is more important. You know, we're not going to take a risk to get this going. This is our biggest asset we had, but we're prepared to take an extra 2 or 3 days in the shutdown just to do things right, to make sure people don't have an incident. So what was this about? This is about changing the perceptions in people's minds, trying to make people think that safety is more important than production. You know, and what do? We show them some cold, hard facts. We show them the brutal reality of where they are. And then as leaders, we demonstrate our values. We don't just talk about it, we do it. We say safety is more important, we'll switch off our platform. So what happened? So here's our safety graph. You know, we went from having, quite a high incident rate down to in the last year, in 2014, we had 0 incidents across our assets. We'd gone 450 days without an incident. Chevron were actually selling these assets at the same time. So Patrick was talking about VUCA. We had our own VUCA situation going on here. People didn't know what their future was. People had uncertainty. It was a volatile area, but we still managed to do it safely. We still managed to get everyone home at the end of the day the same way they came in. You know, and at this stage, it wasn't Ewan pooling the team. Everyone was working together. All my OIMs, all my staff realized we can do this. If we all work safely together, we can get home at the end of the shift and we can be incident injury free. And they had a great amount of pride in this in the end. You know, we're proving that we can do this. We're proving we're as good as other operators, other people within Chevron. You know, so people like this. When they see the graph, it makes them feel good. And it makes them want to continue to be incident injury free because they're now a good performing team. My last slide. So this is our production graph for the oil assets. The line to focus on is the blue dashed line is the decline rate. This is 20 to 30-year-old assets. The decline rate here is pretty well known. You know, it's been the same for about the last 15 years. The red line is our yearly average. So you can see in 2014, we were significantly above plan. It was about 25 or 30% above plan. So you can get your assets to be safe and you can get them to be profitable at the same time. It cost us money in year 1. We increased shutdowns. We pulled lifting lathes in. Year 2, we made a load of money because we could run safely and we could really focus on how do we get good production and good safety at the same time. So it was a great business decision. So I'm getting close to the end of my talk. So I'm not up here to get adulation from the crowd. What a great job you've done, Ewan. We've made people safe. You've made Chevron lots of money. It's about a commitment I have to everyone here and to Denmark. I want Denmark to be a safe industry. I want it to be safer here than it was when I joined. So that's Ewan's commitment. And I'd like you all to think about that. We're going to have some sessions talking about the challenge you have, the commitments you have. Be bold. Aim for excellence. No, we can be incident injury free. We can have great production. Our OPEX during this year was on plan as well. Everything's possible, but it takes hard work. It takes great leadership. It's nothing new you're doing. It's just exerting yourself to make it happen.